I don't even drink coffee, and this book made me want to drink coffee. When I started listening to this book, I had no idea what I was in for. Did I forget to mention that he wakes up alone on the ship alongside his 2 dead crewmates? Hello, my name is Daniela and I'm here to talk to you about all of the books that I've read in the month of August. I managed to read 8 books in August, and I thought we'd do things a little bit differently this time, and we will go from the worst rated to the highest rated. So starting off with the lowest rating I gave out in August is Hide by Kiersten White. This is a horror novel set in a theme park where we follow a bunch of characters who are competing in a game of hide and seek, or so they've been told. I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I was a little bit bored reading this. We're introduced to quite a lot of characters right at the beginning of the book, and I found that quite overwhelming. As the book goes on, it kind of gives you backstory to the characters, but I didn't really connect with any of them. So as things were happening to the characters throughout the book, I really didn't find myself caring. The twist towards the end didn't really excite me, and I found the threat in this book a little bit underwhelming, especially when you find out what the threat is. According to Goodreads, it's only 240 pages, and I can tell you now it felt a lot longer than that because it just did not hold my attention. Moving on, I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I gave this book a rating of 4 stars. This is a cozy fantasy where we follow an orc called Viv who has decided to retire from her adventuring days and go and open a coffee shop. Obviously, this being cozy fantasy, it wasn't the most exciting read. However, the descriptions in this book about coffee and the baked goods that are sold in this shop were absolutely fantastic and had me salivating. I don't even drink coffee, and this book made me want to drink coffee. The characters and creatures that are in this book are also adorable. My personal favourite character is Thimble, who is our resident baker in this book, and I tell you now, the descriptions of what he bakes made me so hungry. It gave me the worst cravings. So if you're happy to put up with the incredible cravings that this book will give you whilst reading it, and you want something that's nice and light and cozy and just something that's a really good, cute book to snuggle up with, then I highly recommend this one. Next up, I listened to an audiobook of The Perfect Child by Lucinda Berry. This is a thriller where we follow a couple who have not been able to have children of their own. I'm pretty sure they both work in the medical industry, which is how they come across the child that they end up adopting, who has a whole host of problems to overcome after being abused in their previous home. This book was super interesting. It had me gripped from beginning to end. I was absolutely fascinated with the plotline. It was really well written. It kept me on my toes. I just kept wanting to listen to it to find out what happened next. This book was so close to being 5 stars. And then we got to the end. And I don't even feel like I can say end, because as far as I'm concerned, this book just did not end. It had no ending. None. 0. I literally got to the end of this book and I thought I had missed something. I thought, did I zone out? Did I stop listening? I rewound the audiobook. To check, because I thought, did I just not hear the ending? Is there something I missed? I think I rewound it a couple of times and re-listened to it. My genuine reaction was, what? Where's the ending? After finishing the book, I went on the internet and I did a little bit of research, and it turns out that the book originally had an ending, but the editor thought it would be best if they left the book open-ended, and therefore they removed the ending of the book. But there is a big difference between an open-ended book and just not having an ending. The ending does, however, exist. There is a video on Facebook that the author posted where they read you the original ending for the book. The original ending is open-ended. I don't understand why they took it out. It was also not as satisfying as I would have expected. One moment of joy I did get after reading this book is going through Goodreads and reading all of the reviews from people who were annoyed that the book did not have an ending. Here is an example of some of our glowing reviews for this book. Danielle says, I'm okay with not having a happy ending, but an ending would be nice. Chrissy says, Christopher was a blind idiot. I can't tell you how livid he made me. How can a supposed intelligent doctor be in such denial? And do you want to know what else infuriated me? The fact that hate the way I ended my rant, then you'll hate the way the author ended this book. And that is exactly how I feel. They did not end the book. If you don't mind reading a book that literally does not have an ending and just kind of cuts you off in your tracks, but up until that point is very, very riveting and enjoyable and thrilling as per the genre, then feel free to read this one. Another 4-star read for me was Magnolia by Jessa Hastings. This is sort of a romance book, although I will say that the characters that the main romance is about aren't really together during this book, because it's set a few years after they've broken up for a specific reason, and you don't really know what that reason is at the start, but you do find out throughout the course of the book. This for me was like the equivalent of watching reality TV but in book form. It's very Gossip Girl-esque, but it's set in London in the UK. Some of the writing, some of the sentences are very beautiful. I wouldn't say I was enthralled to the point where I felt the need to tab. As you can see, I did a couple of tabs and then I just stopped. It's about 500 pages, but the text is quite large. It's quite an easy read. We have 2 different perspectives in the book, and we also have pages where we have like text message conversations. So the 500 pages is a lot less overwhelming than it seems. I actually read this much quicker than I read Hyde, and that was only 240 pages. Tropes wise, we also have the fake dating trope in this. I personally preferred the character that our main character was fake dating rather than the ex-boyfriend who she's still in love with. The only thing that annoyed me about this book is towards the end of it, I felt like it was a little bit rushed. There are 2 more books in this series. One of them isn't out yet. The other one I have on my shelves. So I will be continuing with this. If romance / Gossip Girl / reality TV sounds like your thing, maybe pick this one up. Next, we're moving on to my 5-star reads, and I was very lucky to have 3 of them. The first one I want to mention is Paris, the Memoir. Now, I know what you're thinking. Really? 5 stars for a book written by Paris Hilton? I am as shocked as you are. This memoir goes down a completely different route to what I was expecting. When I started listening to this book, I had no idea what I was in for. This book is insane. I can't believe places like the one in this book exist. I also feel like this was really, really well written. Paris has ADHD, and as a result of that, she kind of jumps around in the story, but she always manages to come back to the point she was previously talking about, and I found that really engaging. She talks in this book about some things that she has kept secret for a very, very long time. When she was a teenager, her parents weren't happy with some of the ways she was behaving, and they ended up shipping her off to what was described to them as an emotional growth boarding school. These turned out to be places where children would be sent for an awful lot of money. Their parents would send them to these schools, and they would go through absolute hell, receive so much abuse in many different forms. Children died in these places, and Paris tells us about her experience in these schools and what she went through and what other children went through at the hands of the people that were working in these schools. They're definitely not schools. I'm just saying schools. I don't really know what to call them. I think it did say what they were in the book, but I cannot remember off the top of my head. This book is absolutely fascinating. It's disturbing, it's scary, it's so sad, it's anxiety inducing, but it was a very, very interesting and engaging read. I'd say if you don't have a high threshold for reading about abuse or SA or anything like that, don't read it. But if you can handle listening to stuff like that, definitely worth a read. Also, if you don't like reading about family members dying, particularly from cancer, that is also included in this book. As far as memoirs go, this was fantastic. My next 5-star read is The Next Person You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. This is the sequel to 5 People You Meet in Heaven, which I also gave 5 stars. I'd say this book was a slightly lower 5-star. It's a short one, it's only about 200 pages, but it definitely packs a punch. I love Mitch Albom's writing style. I feel like this is the closest I have gotten so far to my Frederick Batman vibes without it being Frederick Batman. Again, the text is not too large. It's a very quick read. I love the way that Mitch Albom envisions what heaven might be. So if you like Frederick Batman's books and you haven't read these, maybe give them a go. And finally, my last 5-star read of the month and my favourite read of the month is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This is a science fiction book and we follow our main character, Ryland Grace, who has woken up in a spaceship and doesn't remember who he is, where he is, why he is there. As the book progresses, we follow Ryland as he tries to figure out the answer to these questions. Did I forget to mention that he wakes up alone on the ship alongside his 2 dead crewmates? This was a really, really interesting read. There's a lot of scientific elements to the book, but I feel like it explains it all very, very well. Whenever there are tests being conducted or equations being done, it's very quickly followed up with what that means for the character. There's a critical moment that happens about halfway through this book, which changes the already very high stakes. I don't want to tell you what that is, but I highly, highly, highly recommend that you make sure you reach that moment. And trust me, once you do, you will know. For a very small location with a very limited character count, this book absolutely had me enthralled, and the ending, although leaving me with a few questions of my own that I would love to ask the author, it was a really good ending. I'm sorry I'm being so vague. This book is such a good book to go into blind. Whatever you do, do not read the back of the book. The publishers, I don't know what they were thinking, but they give so much away on the synopsis for this book. You are so much better going in completely blind. 5 out of 5 stars, possibly would reread. Project Hail Mary is heavily featured in my latest reading vlog, so if you want to know more about it or you want to see my reactions, then you can go ahead and watch that. I didn't think I liked science fiction until I read this book. This book changed the game for me. And I'm really excited to try more sci-fi books now, because if I can find anything that's remotely close to how this book made me feel, I will be so happy. And there we have it, guys. That is all of the books that I've read in August. Let me know what you've been reading lately. Do you have any thoughts on any of the books that I have mentioned in this video? And lastly, do you have any recommendations for me based on the books that I have enjoyed from this video? If you do, leave them in the comments. As always, if you liked the video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I will see you next time.